Hey, it's Dre. Another great morning together. It's always good to be here. I hope you guys are having a great week, a great day, and that things are looking up as we continue on our church journey to rise to the challenge for the year, where we consistently take action each day that will net us the success that we're looking for. And the reason I'm always focusing and always talking about the need for us to focus on daily action is because you're going to find that the most successful among us, it is a small, consistent, steady process. It is not this big shot where everything just stars aligned and it was like, boom, oh my goodness, overnight celebrity. No, 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 no. It is a consistent daily habit that they have built, and then they gain momentum, and then they grew from there, right? Once you have momentum and you have a consistent process, the reason I preach consistency is because a lot of times as we put in the work to gain the momentum, we're so inconsistent that we end up losing it. And that's the hardest place to be, is when you've seen the light and then it's taken away. You're really struggling to decide if it's worth going back there again because of the risk of losing it all over again. Today we're going to focus a little bit more on the money mindset have. So today we're actually going to talk about some strategies that you can implement, some discipline-free approaches that are going to help enable you to be able to save the money that you need for whether you're building wealth and legacies, or whether you're saving for a house, or just saving to get out of debt. Whatever your overall thought process or goal is, we're just going to have a high-level conversation about some things that are working for other people. So first, let's lay the groundwork. I'm not sure if you knew, but 78% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. And the reason that that is important, and that was a Forbes article, the reason that that is important is because 78% of people aren't living in poverty, right? Like 78% of people aren't even living at the median wage. That includes some people that are making $100 a month or $1,000 a month, and that's going to include some people that are making $10,000, $20,000 a month. That the problem of saving money, as far as putting things away, that has less to do with the amount of money that you have in, and has more to do with the amount of money that is going out. And that we really have to figure out, why am I spending so much? What is it that is driving me to make these impulsive decisions? What am I trying to do? And you'll find often that people are chasing happiness through external gratification, where they're trying to get that instant gratification, where they see this commercial and everybody's smiling, everybody looks so happy, and it just seems like that's what's missing from my life, right? It's the thing that I never knew I always wanted. And then we go out and we get it, and we find out that the trick that you often find is that the lenders are the ones that have all the money, because of the fact that as a lender, you're charging like interest, right? And so what does that mean? It means that if someone is buying a $200,000 house, that if you've ever seen the way that the contract is written up, it lets you know what that 3, 4, 5% of interest looks like over 30 years on that large amount. And you find that it ends up being more than what the house is actually worth, right? That you're paying more in interest than you may have even gotten on the overall mortgage, right? It is an astronomical fee. And the same is true when you're buying other large purchases like your automobiles and things of this nature, or like furniture and things on credit and layaway, right? When you really get into it, that it becomes very expensive to buy things that we don't have the ability to just pay like cash outright, or at least to be able to pay off within a set amount of time of maybe like a year or two. And so, what is it that is happening to us? Well, that is what we call compounding interest. And what that simply means is every time you go on with like your credit card, then you have to owe a certain interest payment, but it's based on the balance. So the balance is compounding. And so sometimes you're paying only interest when you make your payments, which gets you stuck in that cycle of debt. Now, the good news is with things like your house and your automobile, that is simple interest. And what that means is the payment includes a portion that goes towards the interest and a portion that goes towards the principal. Now, it's loaded on the fees on the front end, right? Like you'll pay $1,000, and out of your first payment, like 900 goes towards fees, and only 100, and that's being generous, may go towards the actual balance of your principal. And so once you get closer to the end, then it's the flip, where $100 is going towards fees and 900 is going on principal. And so it's understanding that they're structured in a way that makes it a little bit harder for you to get out of the debt that you started in, where it costs more money and it takes a longer amount of time. And so if you are trying to save, then you have to be able to say, I have to make different decisions on where I'm spending. I don't want to put myself in a situation where I am tying up three, four, five, $600 a month on a car payment that then basically maxes out all of my excess cash, where now all of my money is going towards this bill, right? So we have to make decisions that enables us to be able to put some money aside and whatever that is. And so you'll find that I believe I read the study, it said about 60% of people have reported that they spend more than they save each month. And so that is a startling statistic. It makes it very difficult for anyone to get a grip on things. Now, part of it has to do with when we're introduced to it, right? Like I know for me personally, I was given, I was introduced to credit cards through my first job where my parents gave me one. And then we were able they're like, hey, just put one meal on it a month. And then you spend that and then you pay it off at the end of the month. So that way you can build some habits where you're not getting yourself into a lot of debt with a credit card and you're able to build your credit for those larger purchases down the road. Now, I do know that for some of us, what ends up happening is the first time we're even introduced to the idea of credit is when we're in college, which is crazy, right? We don't have a job, we don't have the ability to pay this bill, but that is the easiest time that we're able to get a credit card is while we're in college and while we're younger. So they're sending out this stuff, they're sitting on campus, they're handing out this information, you're just signing up and they're just giving you the card and they're telling you that you'll be able to pay for all the stuff that you need and that college will be better for you, right? That you don't have to keep eating ramen noodles and that you can get some real food, right? Like it sounds really good. And it's trying to understand, okay, well, what are the strings attached to that? Why are they giving this to me now when I don't have a job? Do I deserve a credit card at this moment? Am I doing something that this makes sense for me to have it, right? These are questions that we have to ask ourselves as we take a conscious step back and we start saying, well, this doesn't really seem like it makes sense, right? If I was 40 years old, then most likely they would not, in this same situation, give me the card, right? The idea that I tell them I have no job and no income and I have lots of expenses if you just take it out of a loan or something of that nature, where it's like, okay, well, and they're going to say no. And so then you just have to say, okay, well, then why are they saying yes now? And you'll find that that answer is they're trying to create a habit that is a bad habit. And I won't say bad in the loose sense. I usually try to avoid the word, but just in the sense that it is a habit that may not benefit your long-term goals, right? That's probably a better way of saying it. And so I do encourage you guys to really start thinking like, I only want to use this card if I have the ability to pay that balance off at the end of the month. That way I'm building my credit without the risk of me going through making these payments each month where now my money's tied up. And the best way I can put it is the way that you want to look at saving and the way that you want to look at impulsive spending is both have a place in your life, right? Like I don't want you to go off the deep end where you're like, I'm going to save like 60% of my check. Well, who would enjoy that? If you just went from spending 60-70% of your check to now you're going to save 60-70% of your check, the reality is you are probably still spending more than you're taking in, right? Like the majority of America is spending more than they are taking in each month, i.e. why we're going further into debt. So you really want to structure it in a way that allows you to enjoy life and then still to have some discipline and some understanding of what your overall goal is. And so when you're looking at it that way, again, and we're talking about a daily consistent habit, some things I encourage you to do is let's take the discipline out of it. And by that, what I mean is let's not have it where we have to write down everything on an Excel spreadsheet or a piece of paper or log it in some sort of a journal of some kind. Let's see if there's some apps out there that we're able to put the purchases where it automatically just captures it, where it's pulling the information from your bank account and it's putting it in categories for you. There's lots of apps that are available to help you do that, and you can search for them. That way now you can see what's going on, and then when you have the information, and some of these apps will aggregate that information into some sort of a dashboard report, and that's just a fancy way of saying it'll tell you based on percentages where your money's going, right? 30% of your money goes to eating out, 70% of your money goes here. Like it just lets you know where your money is going, and then when you're conscious of it, you can decide whether that is what your overall intent or purpose was. So you always want to make sure that you are automating things in a way so that you're able to figure out where your money's going without you having to make the conscious effort of recording and calculating and keeping receipts and paying attention to stuff, right? If you could have an automated report that once a week or once every other day just kind of sends you, this is what your spending habits are looking like, this is where your money is going, and then you're able to make adjustments off of that, that's what I would encourage you. That's going to help you over the long term. Now, what also holds true is that you're going to want to make sure that instead of focusing on, most people right now, what they do is they spend first and invest the rest. You have to invest first and spend the rest. And you'll find that people who have the set amount that they're going to put away, I mean, think of it almost like the money that you put away when you're giving your offering at church or any charity or anything of that nature. That what you often do is you look at it almost as a bill, and so you pay them just right with all the bills. You just pay them like right out the gate, because that's where the money is going. Like every week I need to give this much money at church, and so you just have that set and you just give it. And then you make decisions on what to do with the rest of the money after that. So the same holds true with the investing. When you have money that is growing instead of money that's gone and then someone else is growing it, that helps you over the long term, because now what you're doing is, instead of you saying, well, I make $1,000 a month and I have to figure out how to allocate that money, if you have 100 of that or 200 of that every single month that goes towards growing, well, now the decision isn't about the 1,000. Now I have 1,100 if you had a 10% return, or I have 1,200 if I have a 20% return, where now you have the more money to work with, and then that's going to help you as far as you're growing the overall savings and the ability, right? You want your money to work for you. Ideally, in the best scenario, about halfway through your life, half of your money you are earning through your work, and half of your money is working for you, where it is generating on its own, right? Whether you want to use the word passive income for that, it means neither here nor there for me. But the idea is you want to be able to work for some of your money, and then you want to get to a place where all of your money is working for you. Sometimes we call that retirement. Sometimes we call that whatever you want to call it. But it's just the idea that you don't always want to have to trade time for money. And if you're always spending your money, you're not able to grow it. You can't do anything with your money that allows you to transition from working and trading time for money to living, to relaxing, to traveling, where the money is still coming in because now you have put your money to work for you. And there's lots of ways to invest, and you probably find all sorts of great articles on that, everything from the market to real estate. There's lots of things that are out there. It just really depends on what someone's goals are. I'm someone who believes in integrated plans, and what that means is I believe that there is a place for every instrument. It just needs to make sense, right? And I think a lot of people have gotten away from just what makes sense, and we go with feelings where we're like, this never works. Well, I have found that a hammer does work if you have a nail, and you're right, that a hammer doesn't work if you're trying to break a piece of wood in half, right? I think that's a fair statement. But instead of walking around saying that never use a hammer because we're being emotional and our feelings are involved, let's just say, does a hammer make sense in this situation? That's always the way that I look at things, and that's always the way that I encourage you guys to look at things as well. So as you start doing that, and I don't know if you read the book, but I've read the book. As one of my favorite ones. It's called The Richest Man in Babylon. It's an older book, and it's basically the idea that you're going to live off of like 70% of your income, and then the other 30% you're going to allocate towards either so if you have debt, you would say, okay, 20% of that remaining 30% goes towards debt, and then 10% is what I invest. If you have other charitable contributions where you're giving and helping other people, well, that would still be a budget item. I find that a lot of people, they have what I'll call a blind spot in their spending, where, if it's for the kid, then we don't need to keep track of that. We're going to spend whatever the kids need. Or, well, if it's for this church or this congregation or this charity, then we're not going to keep track of that. We're just going to give them whatever they need. And you find that whenever you're trying to figure out, well, how are we working, or how do we get this extra money and it's all gone, I'll tell you the first place to look is in the blind spot. So that's always where I tell people, okay, well, what is something that you don't keep track of? Well, the kids we don't keep track of. Well, the food we don't keep track of. Well, the church and charitable, we don't keep track of that. Well, I'll tell you, if you start tracking that, you'll find that whenever you have extra money, that the extra money goes right to the bucket that you don't keep track of. right? And so you have to be able to keep track of everything in the budget. And I say all that to say that another approach that someone can have is they say, okay, let's live on 70%. Let's put 10% with the charity or the church. Let's put 10% on the debt, and then let's put 10% where we invest it and grow it, right? You have the ability to figure out what makes sense, and then as things disappear, right? So as the debt is all gone, as you are no longer going into debt, so all the debt's gone. Well, then we could put 15% on charitable events. We can put 15% on investments and growth, right? There is this ability to kind of ebb and to flow with things. And if you get really good where you're like, dude, we make too much, I can live off of like 40%, well, that's great. Then let's figure out what to do with the 60%. And that could be, investment could be a business adventure. Investment could be like angel investing, right? Like there's lots of things you can do with it, but you always want to have that percentage and you want to budget it. And what that does is that gives you a system that you can use that has little to do with how much money you have, whether you have less money or more money. It is indifferent because it's a percentage that's going towards each of these causes, and then you just operate within that, where nothing is outside of the plan, where there is no blind spot, there is no this can't be budgeted, this is too important. Like everything's got to be budgeted. It really does. And I encourage you guys to take that heart. I hope you enjoy it overall. I always enjoy our time together. And the reason this is important that we're talking about it is that most people, as they're chasing happiness, rising to the challenge, money comes into play. And so sometimes we just have to start with finding out where the money is going. And that way we can understand where we want it to be. And that we have to make smarter decisions with it. We should not live in a country where 70% of people are living paycheck to paycheck. I think it's actually 78%. So where 80% of people are living paycheck to paycheck. It just doesn't make sense. So we have to make decisions that allow us to free ourselves from that. And part of that comes with saving and budgeting for larger expenses so that you are not being trapped within those different plans where you're paying more than what the item is worth, or for a longer period of time where it ties up your money and you're losing the opportunity cost of if you could have put that into something else. But also it becomes the choices that we're making where we're being bombarded with advertisements that are telling us that we need to buy this thing for us to be able to feel happy. And so it does come into play, and so I hope you enjoyed it together. I just want to let you guys know I'm always thankful for our time together. If you can leave in the comments or share it or like it, whatever. But the one thing I'd ask you today is, what is your blind spot in your budget? What's the one thing that is generally agreed that we do not keep track of that because it's too important to keep track of? And then that you're going to make that change today where it allows you to start keeping track of that. And you realize that that is going to be the hole in the bucket that your water is slipping out of. Until next time, I'm Dre. Continue the Choja lifestyle of chasing happiness by rising to the challenge.